TTS, guys. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, high sexual discipline. I wouldn't date a guy who watches porn or goes to strip clubs or anything like that. And ideally...
Wait, you wouldn't date a guy who watches porn?
Nope.
But you do OF?
Yep.
Is that a...
Seems like maybe a double standard.
Is it a double?
No, it's not. I could be a college professor but not date students. I could work at a soup kitchen and not date a homeless guy. Just because I monetize off a demographic doesn't mean I have to date them.
Well, let's get into this
Let's
a
get
little,
into
shall
it.
we? So let's start with, why do you prefer that they not watch porn?
Because it affects pair bonding, it desensitizes you to your partner, it can lead to erectile dysfunction, all those things.
If you were responsible for causing those things in a man, would you be doing an immoral action?
Potentially.
And are you participating in doing those immoral actions to men?
No, just because I think maybe you're less of a good romantic partner, that doesn't mean you're less of a moral person.
No, that's not my question. So
just because I don't think you would be a good husband for me doesn't mean I'm deeming you degenerate or a bad person.
Back up. You just said that all of those are bad qualities that you said that...
Not objectively bad. For me personally, what I'm looking for is pair bonding. Okay, finish.
You said that a person who was causing those problems in men would be doing something immoral.
No, I didn't say that.
So is it if a person's contributing to causing that in men, are they doing something immoral?
So if I'm a lesbian and I only want to date women,
don't ask me a question. Don't ask me a question.
No,
answer my question.
No, I'm explaining to you. Listen.
Don't ask me.
Is this inconsistent? I'm going to ask you a question. If I'm a lesbian and I only want to date women, but I make OnlyFans content for men, is that inconsistent?
Answer my question.
I think she's trying to.
No, she's asking me a question.
No, he's evading my point because it debunks this whole thing.
Asking a question, not answering my question, then I'll answer your question.
Your question has no bearing on this discussion.
Then answer it.
What was your question?
Okay, one more time, since you tried everything to avoid it. If you contribute to those same problems that are against your preference in a mate, okay, those same issues, are you doing something immoral?
Nope.
No.
Same way, like I just said, if I'm a lesbian who puts out pornographic content for men to consume, it's not inconsistent or wrong for me to only date women. I can have a preference for someone while monetizing off an entirely different demographic. That doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. So...
Am I doing something wrong for indulging straight men if I only want to date women?
I think you are. I think that you're creating a contribution towards the immorality, and you know it's immoral because
I don't think it's immoral to be heterosexual and I'd be indulging heterosexuality while personally being homosexual.
Your preference alone is against it. Why is your preference against it? Isn't there an implication
why would sexual orientation be against it? No, answer my question. Why is it if I was a lesbian and I want to date women, but I put out pornographic content that indulges heterosexual men, is that inconsistent, or am I contributing to a problem?
All of that, literally all of that would be immoral. I would say that that's still an immoral thing, whether or not you're being inconsistent there. I didn't make an inconsistency argument. I asked you about whether or not it's moral.
You said if I don't want to date a certain pool that I'm contributing to, does that mean I'm creating a problem?
Yeah, no, I'm just asking, is it immoral for you to contribute to that at all?
No.
It's not.
It's not immoral for me to contribute to traits which I personally would not date.
No, that's not my question. My question is it immoral for you to be contributing towards those traits like the negative side effects in men? Is that immoral to do?
No, because not everyone has the same goals as I do. Not everyone's waiting to have sex until they're married. Some people view sex and relationships completely disparately than I do.
So, but why wouldn't you? Those are all negative side effects. You'd agree with that, right?
It depends. Some people, I know a lot of women who don't want to get married. I know a lot of men who don't want to get married either.
The side effects of like ED, things like this.
Well, that side effect doesn't happen to everybody either.
I'm not saying it does.
I think it depends. If certain men want to live a hedonistic lifestyle, I'm not going to deem them immoral for. I think people have totally different purposes and goals.
Again.
It was, and I answered it.
My question specifically was, if you contribute towards that, that's harmful, isn't it? And isn't that the standard you use for morality?
It's not harmful if it's congruent to their goals. If their goal is to be a hedonist, then that's fine.
But their goal's
not
my
goal.
Okay, but here's the problem.
If their goal is to jack off to as many girls as possible before they die, they can go for it.
Because if it's hedonism, right, you still have a harm principle. So even if a person is doing a thing and they say, I'm going to do this thing because I don't care about the harm, you are still supposed to care about the harm that you cause, right?
No.
No? You're not?
Because they have a totally different moral rubric than I do. If their goal is to fuck as many girls as possible because they think that makes them more alpha or male, I wouldn't support it. Who cares what
their moral rubric is? You're the consequentialist.
What?
So you are supposed to care about the harm you do.
I'm not a consequentialist. We've been over this so many times.
Oh, what are you again?
I said I was a moral absolutist.
You're a moral absolutist.
Yeah. Probably more that than a utilitarian. Why are you shaking your head?
You're not as subjective.
You're not. No,
you're not a moral absolutist. Ridiculous.
I'm sorry, what is that?
It means like you're not necessarily looking at the consequence of an action to deem its morality. My point is, people have totally different goals.
Okay. So is porn always wrong?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Is it always right?
No.
Well, they're not moral absolutes. If it was moral,
That's-
if it
that
was a
has
moral
nothing to do with-
absolute, it would either be always right or always wrong.
That's
It's
not true.
absolute.
It varies.
Okay, give me an example of a moral
I would-
absolute that's not yes or no, right or wrong.
I would love to. With porn, for example, porn will disaffect your relationship if one partner is okay with it and one is not. That will affect cheating and compatibility. If both partners are proponents of pornography consumption, that'll actually increase your sexual intimacy with each other.
What does that have to do with anything I just said?
My point is, you're looking for like a black or white answer. Is porn
Because
good or
you're an
bad? And it depends on the
absolutist.
parties
What do you
consuming
think
it.
absolute means? You don't know what absolute means?
I know what absolute means.
Well,
but
what
I
is
think
a
you're
moral
intentionally- I think you're
absolutist?
intentionally being obtuse.
No, I think you're intentionally evading. What do you think absolute means?
No, answer my question.
What do you think absolute means?
Definite, finite.
Finite and definite at the
Sure.
same time?
At the same time.
That's what you think absolute means?
Absolute means definite.
What do you think a moral absolutist is?
It means you have certain moral principles that you think take precedence over the consequences of those actions, and you want to be a proponent for those moral principles, even if there is an increase in harm over help.
Okay, so it's not about consequences.
What?
It's not about consequences for you at all.
It's not about consequences. It's about looking at the fact that people have different aims. If a certain man wants to prioritize his sexual pornography consumption over getting married because he personally doesn't think getting married is a net good for him, who am I to say that's wrong and I'm contributing to a problem?
But then, let me ask a single question, right? You would agree with me that the age of consent's arbitrary, right?
Would I agree with you that the age of is this TOS, Brian?
No. Okay, the AOC is arbitrary, right?
Is it arbitrary?
Yeah.
Not really.
Then give me the moral imperative for it real quick. The moral absolute statement for that.
The moral imperative would be that it's generally wrong to.
It's generally wrong.
It's
not
generally
based on the
wrong.
consequence, though.
What?
It's not based on the consequence. This is an absolute. So why should the AOC absolutely be X age?
It's not. It varies.
Why
by
should
state.
it be? You're a moral absolutist.
I don't even know if I would subscribe to that.
You wouldn't subscribe to your own worldview?
I don't even know if I would subscribe that there is a certain age of consent because it varies by state.
So
Is there a
you're
different
not an
example?
absolutist then?
You're evading from my whole point.
You're not an absolutist?
You said that it's hypocritical and it's inconsistent and it's kind of immoral. I'm contributing to a moral problem to put out porn
No.
content.
His question was whether or not there
No,
was
you're
a
the one who-
contingency
you're the one who
between a
interrupted
double
me.
standard. I asked you about the morality of a thing.
Yes, and you said I'm
you
creating a
say I'm a
problem
moral
by contributing to
absolutist.
traits that I personally would not date.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
now
completely
now I'm
analogous.
inside of your worldview, and
No,
now
but
I'm
why
trying to
won't you
figure out
adjust the
if
analogy
you're,
I created
because,
between that and me
because
being a
if the
lesbian and wanting to
foundation-
date women,
I'll explain it.
but not wanting to date
Guys,
straight
one
men?
at a time. One at a time.
Yeah, I can
please.
explain it. Because if the foundation of your worldview on its own is incorrect, then I don't care about the rest of what you even just had to say. If the foundation of what you're saying makes no sense at all,
It makes
then
perfect sense.
any claims that you make past that are not even relevant. So explain to me how you're moral. Tell me what a moral absolutist even is.
I don't even know what this has to do with anything. Your rebuttal
You're
to me
just running.
was that
Stop
because
running.
I don't want to date certain traits that I may contribute to, that I'm being hypocritical and I'm creating some moral problem. And then I give you a perfect analogy. If I was a homosexual woman and I dated women, but I contribute to indulging heterosexual male pornography consumption, is that wrong? And you have yet to address that
I
point.
don't need to.
Why can't you? Why can't you?
I'm going to explain it to you. If the underlying foundation for which that current worldview you just
You're saying
explained,
if I can't
stop
flesh
talking,
out a
Farah. It's my
perfect
turn, Farah. It's my turn,
ethical
Farah. It's my
rubric,
turn.
then it
Let
means
him
that I'm
run.
being
My
hypocritical.
turn, Farah.
Let him
Calm
talk.
down.
Let him
Stop
talk, and you go
spurging.
ahead.
Stop spurging and listen.
Let's not use that word. Let's not use that. It's probably
Okay.
probably TOS.
Spurging's
Probably.
not against TOS.
It's not?
No. So,
Okay.
You can tell him,
so
please, I don't
listen.
care.
If you have a foundation for an ethical system, and then you tell me a thing that you ought or ought not do, and I find out that your ethical system itself is inconsistent, you don't even know what it is, why would I ever listen to a word you had to say about ought, Farah?
Because this is your chronic evasion of every point. Is when I give you a perfect analogy and see, this will make you concede on your rebuttal, then you're like, oh, now explain to me from A, B to C your exact moral worldview.
Yeah. Why is that a problem?
Because then we're going to go all the way
integrity of
backwards, and
your
you're like, let's
foundation.
talk about where rights come from. Let's talk about where duties come from. Let's talk about
Let's
obligations.
talk about the foundation of the things you believe. Isn't that crazy?
How was the universe started? Let's talk about that,
The
right?
fa-
That's your go-to all
Are
the
you
time.
going to answer to what a moral absolutist
Are you going to
is?
answer my initial question, which was why was that a false
I'll
analogy
just
between
concede
me
the
being a
whole
lesbian content
argument.
creator?
I'll just concede the whole argument there for the purpose of you
Don't
asking.
concede. Actually, give me an
of you
answer.
answering this question. I
No,
just
no.
conceded for the purpose of the argument.
no,
What's
not
a
for the
moral
purpose of the
absolutist?
argument.
What's a moral
Do you,
absolutist?
no.
I just conceded for the purpose of the argument.
Stop saying for the purpose of the
Why
argument.
not?
Genuinely.
I'm sorry. I can't test your consistency by conceding the argument just for the
I
purpose
put
of
out a
testing the
preference.
worldview.
I
That's
put out
not
a
okay with
preference,
Farah.
And you created a rebuttal, and then I gave a perfect rebuttal. And
Yeah,
now
and I'll
to
just
evade,
concede it for the
you're
sake
saying,
of
where'd
argument.
your rights come
Yeah, I'll
from?
just
Where do your
concede it
ethics
for
come
I'll
from?
just concede it for
What's
the
a
sake of
moral
argument.
absolutist? Just find
I'll
every word in the
just
dictionary for me.
concede it.
Enough for the sake of the argument.
just
I'm genuinely
conceding.
asking you, why is it a false analogy?
Yeah, I'm just conceding it for the sake of argument.
But
Now,
you
can
keep
we get
saying for the
back-
sake of the argument.
Can we get back to what because I need to
I'm
know.
not interested in talking
You're
about
not
how
interested
the
in
world
talking
started.
about the foundations of your own ethical system.
Ethical system, we're talking about sexual and romantic preferences.
But why would I care what your preferences are if you can't give me any type of ID for why it's ethical or unethical?
So I should just never talk if I can't flesh out to you how the universe
You
started.
should never make an ought
where
claim.
rights come from.
You should never make an ought claim unless you can say you ought
made
to
the
do
ought
this
claim.
based on
You
this
made the ought
moral
claim.
Wait, let him go. Let
you,
him talk. Go
You
ahead.
cannot say, Andrew, you ought to do this. And when I say, why ought I do that? You go, I don't fucking know, because I don't really feel like
That's
you
so
should.
funny because you're the one who made the ought claim.
I didn't
said
make an
I
ought
wouldn't
claim.
date a guy who watches porn.
What ought claim did
and
I
then you
make?
said, then you ought not to contribute to that problem if you don't want to date a guy who
No,
watches
I asked
porn.
you if you should.
Yeah, so you created the ought claim.
No,
it's not about
I'm
should.
asking
I'm saying
you
my
from your
preference is
worldview.
completely
If
consistent.
you'd like to know my worldview,
I
yes, it's
don't
all
care.
total degeneracy. I hate it all. I think it's all immoral. What's a moral absolutist? Now, can you answer the question?
My point was,
You're still not going to answer
me
the
saying
question.
that this creates
I
certain
just
traits,
answered
that doesn't
to
mean
your
I think it's
question.
morally wrong. Okay?
Answer the question. What's a moral absolutist?
A moral absolutist is someone who has certain moral principles that they think take priority over the consequences of those actions, and they think those should be honored with precedence over a utilitarian worldview.
So, why is it then that you're giving me an argument from the consequence?
How did I?
Because you're saying,
AB check. Thank you for the gifted 20 memberships. Go ahead, Andrew. You're saying.
okay. So what you're saying here is,
I didn't even give you a consequence.
you say pornography, not immoral, right?
Not necessarily, yeah.
Not necessarily. But if we try to discover why it's not, the reason it's not always immoral is because there's some consequences that I think are better than other consequences. That's why.
Even then, that has nothing to do with morality.
It would for an absolutist.
If I prefer a partner who's 6 foot over 5'10",
Mm-hmm.
and I'm preferring the consequence of their height, that doesn't mean I think 5'10" men are immoral.
Unless
Or
you're
there's something morally wrong with being
but
short.
You wouldn't say, I'm a moral absolutist. I believe that this X thing is absolutely always immoral,
I'm
except
asking
in
you,
the
why
case
are we
of the
conflating? Why are we
consequences.
conflating romantic preferences with a moral rubric? Same way if I said
Because it's an ought claim.
no, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Same way if I said I prefer a tall guy over a short guy, that's not me saying, oh, then it's bad for me to contribute to something that decreases height in men.
Yeah, but that would be a preference. In this particular occasion, I'm not talking about a preference. I'm asking you about the
We were
morality of
talking
a
a
thing.
preference. Same way again, if I could be
And
indulging
now I'm talking about the
heterosexual men
morality
while
of the
being a
thing.
lesbian, we
Yeah.
can go back and forth.
Okay, fine. So we'll just do. Oh, you think it's moral because your preferences, and I think it's moral because my preferences.
I
But
didn't
you're
say
a moral absolutist.
I didn't say moral. I literally said morality has no bearing on my romantic preferences
Then
in this
what?
instance. You're the one bringing up morality
Then
for
if
no
we're
reason.
just talking
Same
about
way again,
preferences,
I can
what are
like
we
a
even
guy
talking
who's a
about?
certain race or a certain height, and that doesn't mean I'm claiming
Then
all
what
other men
are-
are immoral.
Then Farah.
If I
if all
prefer
we're
women as a
talking
woman,
about-
am I calling men immoral?
If all we're talking about is I like water and you like lemons,
Yes.
right? Then why, if we're making the discussion about these things which are going on inside of consistency issues, things like this, like he was talking about, or you claiming you're a moral absolutist, things like this, we're now outside the realm of preference. We're now into the realm of Farah's worldview. So
We're
I'm trying to
talking about
figure
romantic
out
preferences, and I'm
Yeah.
saying, why does romantic preferences even fall within the worldview of morality?
because what if you're romantic?
if I prefer a guy
I'm
with a
trying to
big
tell
dick
you.
over a small dick, does that
Yeah.
mean I think guys with small dicks are immoral?
I'll tell you. Because
Tell me.
what if you indulge in your preferences and they're actually against your own morality? Then are you doing something immoral by following that preference?
Right, and I'm saying I'm not deeming those guys who watch porn or go to strip clubs immoral. I'm saying for what I'm seeking in a romantic relationship, those are not traits that would be preferable
Right.
to
You're
my
saying
goals.
they're not immoral, and I'm trying to show you that I think you think that either A, you're right and they're not immoral and you're a consequentialist, or
I don't think it's immoral. I would be friends with guys who watch porn. If I actually thought it was immoral and I thought it was like akin to an actual moral wrongdoing, like murder or the R word, then I wouldn't be friends with those people. I wouldn't be friends with girls and guys who watch porn or go to the strip clubs.
How do you determine whether something's morally positive or negative?
It would be by case. I can't flesh out a perfect moral
would it
system
be
for
would
you
it be
right
based
now.
on the consequences of that
I'm
action?
asking you, what does morality have to do with a romantic preference?
Don't.
So, okay,
hang on.
you
No,
have
no,
to-
listen. That's a bait and switch.
It's not. This whole question arose
You always
because
do
he
the
asked me
same
my
thing. When I ask you a
preferences.
question, you answer with a question. What he asked you specifically is, how do you know something you're doing is moral or immoral?
I
do you
don't know.
know?
How do you know?
I don't have a pure moral framework at this
So
time.
you're not a moral absolutist.
No shit.
I said I probably subscribe
There you go.
more to
You're a
moral
consequentialist.
absolutism.
You're a consequentialist.
Because
Is that- are those
you
the two
say, okay,
options?
you took murder and you take all of these other things based on the consequences of what happens in that scenario. So murder.
People,
if
people
someone
who are
commits
anti-murder
murder,
are just
it's a negative.
consequentialists. I'm
Let
pretty
him
sure
finish.
moral
Just-
absolutism
No, no,
is
you-
against murder.
Wait
Come on.
for it. Just let him finish.
So if you
It
commit
makes no
murder,
sense.
the consequence is negative because you take someone's life. You take human life. So that's a consequence.
I'm
So
pretty-
you're looking at the consequence and you determine it's bad. You don't take. You're not pulling from objective standard.
And if-
you are taking your interpretation of the consequence and then conflating that with negativity.
If you think moral absolutists wouldn't object to murder, you're deranged.
Then tell us what your standard is.
For why someone should be against murder, that doesn't fit the consequentialist
No,
framework.
no.
For your standard of what your morality is based on.
I don't even know why we're talking about morality.
I know that you don't know, but
You're
now
using this as an evasion 'cause you don't wanna concede on the point that my preference is
Here's
completely
what you're actually
consistent.
saying. You're not saying I don't know why we're talking about morality. You're saying I don't know the answer to your fucking question.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for what is
Right.
your perfect moral
So
framework.
your,
When I write
so
a
your,
book
so
right
your moral
now,
framework is based on something you don't even know.
don't even know.
Yeah, you don't even know.
No,
People
yeah,
write
because
300
you said-
pages to flesh out their morality. They can't give you a 2-sentence quip on the whatever
They can.
podcast.
No,
No, they
you
can't.
say
Yes, they can.
You say the foundation.
No,
for,
because if I asked you, you'd probably say like, "Oh, I subscribe
Christian
to
ethics.
Christianity," but
Christian
then you'd probably
ethics.
have some exceptions to that.
And you could maybe flesh those out by giving me an internal critique, which I'm fine with because I follow Christian ethics, which is exactly
I'm
what I'm
just
doing
saying
to
you
you.
have yet to explain how any of this pertains to my
hang on.
romantic
So you
preferences.
just told me, you said I have a worldview. I can't justify my worldview. I don't even know how I came to the worldview. I don't even know what my standard is for morality. But this thing over here, that's not immoral. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm saying, how does morality? Can you explain to me why morality even pertains to this conversation of romantic preferences?
Because if we're talking about pornography, we're coming at it from two different standards. I'm saying that the standard is immoral. You're saying that the standard is moral. I'm saying I'm going to justify my morality. You say you can't justify your morality. I want people to listen to the guy who can justify their morality and not to the person who absolutely
Okay, here's
can't.
my 2-sentence cute little answer. I think generally people should aim to self-actualize, and genuinely they should like seek to fulfill their autonomy. So if someone has a certain goal for themselves that generally is not harming someone else, and for instance, like they want to fuck as many people as possible,
What
and
does
they're not creating other
self-actualize
harm,
mean?
will live up to their potential. I don't know if that's congruent with a Christian framework.
Live up to, I don't even know what that
I mean,
means.
all this is consequence based. It's dependent upon the outcome.
That's not true.
It
else
is
is it
though.
dependent-
What is it
Self-actualizing
dependent on?
is consequentialist based. I think you can self-actualize and maybe have nothing to show for it at the end of the day, but I
Yeah.
think absolutists would
But
still look
these
at the
are what's-
effort and the intention. That's literally what an absolutist is.
Well,
They look
okay,
at the
you're
intention
giving him
behind the
preferences.
action.
You're just saying.
You're just giving him
okay, you're
preferences.
just talking about the absence of negative outcomes. So I mean, it is
This doesn't make it a
consequentialism.
consequentialist just because it
No, no,
also
no.
happens to overlap with consequentialism.
I'm asking for the standard, and
no,
you're just giving us preferences.
Let me ask you, why is it that my romantic preference has anything to do with morality, or why is it inconsistent? I know it sounds bad to say I do OF, but I wouldn't date a guy who does X, Y, and Z, but genuinely flesh it out, because right now it just sounds like you guys have an unjustified visceral reaction to the fact that I sound like a hypocrite. You can actually flesh it out.
Okay, so let me flesh it out for you one more
Flesh
time.
it out without just asking, oh, right, give me a 2-sentence moral
I won't-
framework.
I'm not even going to ask you a question. I'm just literally going to flesh it out for you.
If I ask you why you wore a blue shirt
I'm
over
trying
red,
to answer
and
your
then you said I
question.
just prefer blue, would
Yeah, that
I
would
say,
be a
okay, then it's
preference.
immoral to
That would
wear
be a
red?
preference.
Then why is mine not a preference?
You would have to make a justification for that.
What do you mean?
Unless you're saying that your entire moral framework is just a preference.
So if you were to say I look better in a blue shirt than a red shirt, and I were to say,
I would
oh,
say that
then
that's-
you're selfishly motivated. Why are you only interested in what you like? Maybe you should survey the
If you
panel
can make a good
and
argument,
find out like what we
yeah,
prefer
make a
looking
great
at. 'Cause we're the
argument.
one who's going to have to stare at you for 4 hours. But wouldn't you say that's kind of a weird rebuttal to why you chose a blue shirt over a red shirt?
Is that your argument?
I'm showing you how ridiculous
No,
you
my
sound.
argument's not ridiculous. What
It's a
you're
completely
saying,
ridiculous.
Then stop talking. Let me make my argument. What you're saying is just a sequence of preferences. You're saying, Andrew, why did your preference to do this thing, which you have a preference to do, that nobody considers immoral, including you and I, why did you do that thing? I say, well, because it's a preference. You go, oh, okay, makes sense. It's a preference. All you're giving us right this second for the entire standard, for your entire morality, is your preference.